Good evening, everybody. My name is Arul. Very brief introduction. I'm an engineer, and I think as I was passing out in my fourth year, I went through a huge crisis about what exactly I wanted to do in my life. Was a bit lost, and luckily, I found myself pretty soon, and I figured out that through a series of uh, meeting different kinds of people, I figured out that the profession that most resonates to me is training. And again, over a couple of jobs, looking at it and all that over a short period of time, I landed up starting my own firm. So the topic of development centered organization that we're going to look at, I'm going to take a rather very simple approach, and I'm going to take a hands-on observational approach, as what I've seen over the last 27 years, what I've dialogued with fellow professionals, and what have we attempted, what have we failed, what is more in the industry itself. Now, just a little bit of a orientation at what is a development centered organization. I would say that by and large, there are only a very few organizations that would fall under that category, and there's no certificate to it, or there's no measurement yardstick in general. But most of the organizations, we even though they may run well, run very efficient, and even if the people are performing very well, they may or may not be truly development center. And what do we mean by that? Is the human who's passing through the organization growing as an individual human being, growing in terms of skills, growing in terms of certain roles that they are doing? Is there something that's occurring? So I'm going to take this very simple approach of employees, team members, and supervisors and organizations and the HR itself playing this role of development, and that would create a certain ambience of what I'm referring as a development centered organization. First is a question, which often there are a couple of times I've spoken, with a couple of HR colleagues, couple of L&D colleagues, is that why is it that organizations have more recruiters? Like if you take HR itself, there will be recruiters, there will be generic HR, there'll be like, maybe one or two in comp and bin. And then you will have, in HR ops and all that stuff. But in general, barring a few organizations which I've seen, the L&D count, the number of trainers or coaches are rather very less. And we all know that if for some reason the organization is tightening the purse, then the first thing that they do is stall all the workshops and coaching programs that are running, even if they are midway. For example, when the first lockdown was announced, there was a program of mine which was right in the midpoint, and it was stalled for a period of time, and then they open it back. So this is the scenario in general. Now, what if we flip it a little bit around? What if we hire more trainers? What if we hire more coaches in and um, bring the atmosphere of true development for people? How would that occur? By the way, much what I'm sharing, though, I'll be speaking from the angle of corporate and companies can easily apply for parenting as well. Okay, because the principles would remain the same. Because I do know listeners here, the different kind of listeners who come in and hear this. So if we flip the equation, what are we trying to tell the people? What are we're trying to tell the people that on a very positive note, we're saying that, well, we expect, that that we grow year on year. Now most of the time when people make this statement, we want to grow more on year. What they're really looking at, for example, if it's a sales organization, let's take this example of a sales organization. Somebody joins in and grows an account, and then they then the second or third year they're able to bring in a couple of other accounts, large accounts, small accounts, and they grow from one geography to 10 geographies. So generally, let's say they have served for about 5 6 years in the organization would acclaim that they have done a really good job, and they are growth oriented, and they're developing the organization. Yes, true. Okay, but have they truly grown as individuals in their capacity to handle crisis, handle stress, handle very difficult customers, or even some of the skills like we are talking about sales, prospecting customers, understanding customers, negotiation. While many of it is part of the training programs that they go through, has there been an actual development? And if you can really bring in the focus on that, that's when the need, the generic need itself would come in. Can we hire more trainers and coaches? Okay. Now I'll go into these more detail, but I'm just laying the framework first. Now, is the role of development only that of trainers and coaches? More so? No. I think if I have to be very honest, I think most of the development would be done by the supervisors or uh, supporting supervisors. It's like metrics reporting and all that. I think about 60, 70, or 80% would largely be done by the supervisors through the informal comments, through the feedback. When you show the work, what do they say? That is where the actual development comes. 20 to 30% would happen through formal or informal training coaching programs, either through internal trainers or other vendors from outside. This is what I've actually seen. Okay. Now, in such a case, is the so for example, the a person is performing on the job, and let's say it's a research kind of a organization or a manufacturing kind of an organization. If the supervisor turns back and in the performance review or other ways say that these you need to develop, these are A, or extraordinary or average or whatsoever, there's a role in there? No. Like if you go back, and that's why I said much of what I say can be equated to the field of education also. The word educate actually means to draw forth from within, to draw forth from within. The same is true for actually learning and development. Today we were working on a learning and development mandate. We run a recruitment firm also for one of our customers, and I was kind of working with the team to fine tune the understanding. Uh, Now, many a time, when you come to learning and development, there's a lot of emphasis on gap analysis, need analysis. So there's a stakeholder conversation, identifying what is the gap, plugging it by creating courses, instructional design, curriculum development, and all that stuff. So, and with the intervention of coaching, these have become better because there's a one-to-one customization. But just because I do a curriculum, and whether it is done like a regular workshop format or it is done by the latest fad like bite-sized learning, none of it still is development centered. Development centered means that a person is, I'll give you some scenarios. A person is struggling. Now, how we intervene, we will talk about, and there are many ways of intervening. And after about a couple of days, what the person has been struggling, there's a movement. Okay, the person has realized from within what exactly is the gap. Maybe it's a motivational gap. Maybe it's a lack of clarity of the role, lack of clarity of the vision of the product and service that they're doing, or they figured out a particular strength or a skill that they don't have, and they've taken that responsibility, and you are seeing that something is shifting in them. Then you have a component of an organization, a individual who's starting to shift and move forward. You have one frequency which is developing, moving forward, self-driven or triggered by, sometimes it could just be a conversation saying that, hey, this is not acceptable, and then something gets triggered, and there's an actual development of a skill or an attitude or a purpose that sets in place. So many things can intervene. So coming back to that point, just because I do a program or as a supervisor, I give a feedback that this and this has to be developed is not over. The experience of development, the person is experiencing, the other person, let's say John or Mary, is going through that journey. They're experiencing that development, and they turn around in a couple of days or a couple of weeks, and there is something shift that occurs in them, and they have moved. genuinely, and it is not something that they're going to slip back in general. It's something that they have learned, they have verified, they've got feedback, and they're able to hold their ground. Now something has shifted. Okay. Now, what would it look like for an organization that is development centered? Actually, I don't think I have a straightforward indicator of that. Okay. So, for example, there was one organization that I was doing a leadership retreat of about, there was a large leadership team of about 120, 150 people. I would certainly say that they were attempting very genuinely to be a development centered organization. Very genuine attempt. Year on year, there was an offsite of leadership team, about 3, 4 days retreat, all fully sponsored. And then there were very, very different, attempts internally. There were trainers, there were technical trainers, there were behavioral trainers. There was very, very genuine attempt. But was their development is something that is questionable. They were performing very well. Okay, performance is one. Development enables, like, so the thing is that you can perform to a certain extent without truly, development is on a continual journey. It's a very conscious, driven with an aspiration, with a flame that I want to move, I want to progress, and that kind of an organization would certainly have a slightly different flavor. Okay, no matter how things are difficult, there will be what is called, we have used these terms, learning organizations, which simply would mean that the flame is lit. Like in the individual, if the flame is lit, there is a genuine attempt, to gather, master ongoingly. And I have actually definitely met individuals like these. In different organizations, I've met different individuals, and there is a certain positive pride in what they do, and there is a certain humility, and whether the person is senior or junior, there's a certain humility to always look at what is it that I can learn from this person or that person. And I can certainly say my father was a very good example of that. He retired as a head HR, and I still remember, to just give you a small example. Once he went for a training program, and this was a training program which is not the regular corporate thing. Like, if you have a regular corporate program, then there's a way of seating, there's a honoring of hierarchy and all that. All that is going away right now. There's more circular seating, but I'm still saying, in that workshop there were all kinds of people, from 14 years of age to 70 years of age, and they paired them in groups, and then post the workshop, they were going to do a 4 month seminar. And his buddy, like the buddy concept, his buddy, this was when my father was the head HR. His buddy was a college boy, and my father still, I've heard him saying several times that he learned so much from him. And there was this typical exercise where it's called the hello exercise. In that exercise, one is supposed to say a hello, and the other person is supposed to give a feedback saying inspiring or boring. As simple as that. And I heard this from my father. He said, and my father is an extraordinary communicator. The people who know my father would know that. And he could handle a trade union to the biggest stakeholders and multinational people and all that. And here, with full confidence, he says an hello. Person says inspiring. But the second and third time, he started saying boring, boring. My father recognized that he was coming from a certain template. And then slowly he had to go and reinvent and reinvent and reinvent. And he said that it was such a learning experience for him. A development centered organization has at least a few individuals, or a critical number of individuals, and who are aiming to develop themselves, to develop the product, to develop the service. Now, the product development and service development, I think, is going on really well with many organizations, especially in the last couple of years. Some organizations have truly seen that. I mean, in IT, you will find this very common, and even in the other ways, there's been definitely some substantial movement. But still, in the same organizations, while the product and services move, people may function better, but the thirst to develop in all rounded ways, of the vision, clarity of vision, uh, uh, strengths, competencies, expression of that. How do you build a culture and all that stuff? There's a large there's a lot of effort that we can put in there. Now, coming back to the subject, I personally think that the supervisory development that we generally do does not bring straight into focus development. For somebody to understand development, in my personal view, it will take them about 6 to 8 years minimum. Okay, because it's not just a bunch of techniques and tools or do this and do that. It's an art. It's a knack. So, for example, if I find a person not performing, now how do I turn this around? What's exactly going to click for this person? And all of us have a very small or maybe reasonably large but still manageable number of people. That's how the organizational chart splits the team for us. In the team that is assigned, and I'm assuming that right now I'm talking to the supervisors and the managers, in the team that is assigned for us, how do we develop each individual? I'm sorry to say, but unfortunately, for each person, the key is different. Okay, while there could be certain large generalizations, the key is different. And I'll give you a interesting story which I always remember. I forget the name. This is a real story of somebody I think in the US who was a extraordinary therapist, counselor or a therapist, and the lady goes to him and she has this problem of heights. Okay, and she goes to him and he starts working with her, and she's very genuine and he's also very genuine. But then she at some point it keeps getting frustrated and she says, you know what, doc, unless the world turns upside down, my problem is going to continue. So he tried and it wasn't clicking. And one day he had a brain wave. So he said, look, do you trust me? And she said, of course I trust you, doc, but it's not working for me. Then he said, I'll make one last attempt, but whatever I say you should do, there should be no question. Then she said, yeah, of course, sure, I'll do that. So he said, look, my friend is a pilot and he flies a biplane. So I want you to just get on to it. And he was not going to take you too high and all that. You don't have to worry. Just kind of go around a little bit and this will be our last exercise. And she said, doc, you must be nuts because I've come with the problem of heights and you are now putting a loop, a bind here. What do I do? Doc says, look, trust me. He's a very good friend of mine, very safe, seasoned pilot. It's not going to take you to great heights and all that. Don't worry. So she says, okay, this is the last thing. And then she gets on the biplane. And this guy is almost an expert. So he kind of cruises, keeping safety and all that in mind. And buildings, he goes on a low cruise, low level, shows her several of the stuff in a way that is suitable to her. And she's very happy. And then she says, okay, pilot, I think I'm fine. Thank you. I think we should settle down. And he says, okay. And what he does is, as the biplane is going, or some plane or biplane or whatever, as it's going, he just flips it for a few seconds, and she shouts, "What the heck? Like, are you out of your mind?" And then he says, "Oh, okay." And then he brings it back. Okay, and then he lands the plane, and then she's like pissed off and angry with him, and she says, you and this dog and all that, I must sue you guys and all that stuff. And she goes back home and discovers the height problem has disappeared, is gone. And then on hindsight, she just recognizes the genius of the doctor, because she had a belief structure which says that unless the world turns upside down, this is a real story. It's not a false story. It's a real story. I've read it out of a book of this person being interviewed and quoted. He just used the same belief structure and created it physically for the person to flip around and solve the problem. Like this, every individual, the key that is going to take them forward differs from person to person to person. This is the whole beauty, which is why I think L&D has cracked it by bringing coaches and all that stuff. But however, it's become too high profile, and it's become you know let's say even too high priced, and once in a while or a few people. But I personally think there should be coaches available for everybody, everybody in the organization. And if everybody is trained, then, coaching L&D people, training people, you're somebody who's moving in after a couple of years of experience as a team lead needs to be taught coaching. Okay. Now, that way you're going to create a true development centered organization. And honestly, my take is that you're not going to spend more money. Actually, you'll be saving a lot of money by genuinely working with people and bringing their human potential and the mastery of whatever work or role that they're doing forward. In such a case, even for example, bringing coaches in with so many schools and so many certifications and all that stuff, we get standardization, but we also run into trouble. It's like if you do these, then you're supposed to have done a great coaching session. It's true, but may not be true. Has that been a development that has been enabled inside out? The person has to realize something. The person has to experiment with something. The person has to get convinced on something. Can we enable that? That's a development centered organization. Why should we not create that? Is the whole conversation that I'm having with you right now. Now, the more the larger the organization, sometimes this gets a little bit tougher because of the large geographies and people that are there, and also the the doubts that people carry, that they think they can't do this. And I'll give you an example. uh, I had two people who had approached me. One was, there were a team of founders of an organization, and they reached out for coaching, and I was coaching them. So it was fantastic. They got a lot of clarity on what they wanted, vision, and all that stuff. And now they said, "Look, Arul, would you help us to take it and translate it into the team?" I said, "I'll be more than happy. How do you think we should do?" So I said, "Arul, why don't you come and do the same thing that you did for us all, which is to get clarity, vision, and alignment to the team?" I said, "Yeah, sure, I can do one session, but beyond that, since you have come and I have shown this to you for like about four times, over four sessions, why don't you all do it, and I will act as a mentor to you all, and even in that session, I'll pitch in and guide." They said yes, and then they came back again and they said, "Arul, would you not do it for them? It'll be far more easier because you have done this over the years." I turned back and said, "Look, if I do it, I'm going to get money from you all. I may get another couple of sessions from you all. But truly, how do we take this on? Why not the founders or the leaders themselves roll up your sleeves, and just as you're spending so much time understanding the product or learning the marketing skills or learning the product development skills, why don't you spend the time to learn this so that we can sustain this over a period of time?" And that is the conversation that we need to push a little bit, convince a little bit, and have with our stakeholders. uh, but to be very honest, I've seen the bottleneck coming from even the best well-intentioned experts. Just because somebody is very good in the job, they may not be interested in developing others. It's just that it doesn't come sometimes for them. They may give feedback, which may be spot on. But development is an art. Development is waiting with the other person, knowing how much to give, how much to wait, how much to boil the water, and how much to allow certain cooling to occur. That's truly development. So to kind of pull this whole thread together, I would personally propose to many and all organizations in all the sectors to increase the count of trainers and coaches and all that stuff. Number one. Number two, even if we do that, we may not accomplish if they're just going to do the same education method, which is outside in. You throw a subject in or you throw a guideline in. That alone is not going to work. Even the education is slowly moving to an inside out. Even if it's knowledge, how do you gain the knowledge yourself? It's not just reading, but how does it all assimilate in together? In the same way, the trainers and coaches need to be taught experiential learning, experiential workshops, experiential coaching, experiential facilitation, guiding a journey for the people so that there is development. Now, this is very easy to measure. Today, I think most of the organizations will not do anything if you can't measure. So, fantastic. Measure it. Measure it not just by measure it on the results. Okay, there are two kinds of measures that can be done, which is on the process and then on the results. If you're measuring a training program by a questionnaire which says, did you like what the trainer did you like the content, was it useful, was it, yeah, you may get some feedback on the trainer, but you're not going to get measuring on the development. Clarify parameters. You can clarify almost anything. Is the person understanding the vision of the organization? Are they able to express it? Have certain measures, reflective self-reflection, 360, why not? Extend it to a few other things that are important. If the person is developing, then you would see it in attitude. You would see it in the product knowledge, for example, or you would see it in the mastery of a people manager role, and have some kind of quantitative and qualitative parameters. Today research has come to that point that there is a lot of qualitative parameters. So not just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but certain qualitative parameters. Take the time to assimilate it, then I think work becomes extraordinarily uh, joyful, because nothing close to evolving, nothing close to transforming, nothing close to developing. Because when we develop, there's a flame that gets lit, and that's one of the most beautiful ways to live life lit with a certain direction. And also, I think we talk a lot about team bonding. I think the best bond is when the person turns back and feels that you've truly contributed to my life, and remembers you now or later. Remembering is not the main point, but feels that you've developed, and that is a deeper bond. That's a deeper contribution. So this is what I wanted to share, and I think it begins with the organization deciding, that the key leaders of the organization or other ways decide that we're going to have a developmental focus. Look at practical, ratios in the HR. Look at how you're going to, train the supervisors in the skills of, development, not just as saying things, which I think mostly people can do, but more as how they observe, how they listen, how they enable another person. Not so there are two components in development. What is it that the organization wants? Two, what is it they uniquely carry? Each individual has certain unique talents, and a lot of room and scope can be given for the individual unique development too. So thank you so much. Anything you want to wish to add, share, do reach out and share so that I can learn from you all also. Thank you so much and take care. Bye bye.